Okay, today we're going to go ahead and start your homework, which is 4-5 worksheet 2, and it's over the horizontal shifting as well as the vertical and the period change and in intervals. So here we go. Number 2, sorry. Y equals the cosine of pi over x over 2 plus pi over 2 minus 3. So what you're going to basically do here is the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our amplitude. So our amplitude is the absolute value of 5, which is going to be 5, and that is my amp. That is the distance between your level and your maximum, and your level and your minimum, okay? That now has to say, is this positive or is this negative? It is going to be positive, which means my pattern is going to be handlebars, and it's not changing because it's positive. If it was negative, we would change it, and it would be reflecting it. So I have maximum, level, minimum, level, maximum. Okay? The next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and then find our period. Our period is going to be 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. So that's 2 pi divided by, my b value is attached to the x by multiplication. When you divide by a fraction, you are actually multiplying by its reciprocal. The pi's cancel out, and you're going to be left with 2 times 2, which is 4, and that is your period. Never had a number as a period, so that's okay. Just know that that's totally legal. Next, we want our interval. Our interval is going to be our period divided by 4. So that's 4 divided by 4, which gives me 1. That is the number of units I'm going to add to go from one point to the next point to the next point. Okay? So now I've gotten my amp, my pattern, my period, and my interval. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and then find our level. Our level is going to be equal to 0 plus or minus c. This is your c, so therefore it's going to be 0 minus 3, which is negative 3 as your level. Then we're going to find our maximum. That is your level plus your amplitude. Your level is negative 3. Your amplitude is 5. So this is going to give me a 2 as my maximum. Then we're going to go ahead and find our minimum. Our minimum is going to be our level minus our amplitude, so that's negative 3 minus 5, which is negative 8. So we found our amplitude, we found our pattern, we found our period, our interval, our max, level, min. So now what's different today is our starting point and our ending point. So our starting point, we are going to take the junk in the parentheses. Now, I want to make myself very clear. If you look at your homework tonight and you don't see parentheses, then your starting point is 0 and your ending point is your period. If you do see parentheses, then it has a horizontal shift and you have to do the starting point and the ending point. So my starting point, junk inside the parentheses, pi over 2x plus pi over 2 is equal to 0. Ending point, the junk in the parentheses, is now equal to 2 pi because that's where it typically ends. Okay? So let's solve each of these. Go ahead and multiply everything by 2 to eliminate that fraction. So pi x plus pi is equal to 0 times 2 is 0. Subtract the pi and divide by pi to give you negative 1. Over here, multiply every single term by 2. So that's pi x plus pi. Over here, biggest mistake. 2 times 2 is 4 pi. Go ahead and subtract that pi over. That's going to give me a 3 pi. So then x is equal to 3. Now, I have my starting point and my ending point. How do I know I'm right? Well, remember, I gave you that nice little way to check. The way you check is you are going to say your period is equal to the absolute value of your starting point minus your ending point. My starting point is going to be negative 1 minus 3, which is negative 4. The absolute value of that is 4. So we're simply going to come back here and say, hey, was my period 4? It absolutely was 4, which means I know that I'm correct now because I've checked. And I know my starting point's at negative 1, my ending point's at 3. That distance is going to be 4 units. Okay, so that brings me to the next thing, which is the physical graphing of this. So I have x, and I know I'm starting at my starting point, which is negative 1. And then I'm adding my interval to that, which is going to be 1 unit every time. So negative 1 plus 1 is 0, plus 1 is 1, plus 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. That one was super easy. We didn't need our calculator for that, right? So then what goes on the inside here is going to be the 5 times the cosine of pi x over 2 plus pi over 2 minus 3. Okay? Then I'm going to go ahead and have my pattern here. And then I'm going to have my y value. Now, we already said back here that our pattern was motorcycle handlebars, max, level, min, level, max. So if I come back down here and write that down, I have my maximum, I have my level, I have my minimum, I have my level, and I have my maximum. Now, we're going to do some math to prove that we are correct, okay? So to do that, I'm going to have 5 times the cosine of pi over 2x plus pi over 2 minus 3. Now, the very first number we're plugging in is going, for x is going to be negative 1. So this is going to give me negative pi over 2 plus pi over 2, which means that cancels out to give me 0. Then, this is 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1. What is the cosine at 0? The cosine at 0 is going to be pi is 1, so that's 5 times 1. So that's 5 minus 3, which is 2. That 2 is my maximum value, which is exactly what it's supposed to be, so I know that I'm right. Okay? So now we're going to do that whole process again. So if we do that whole process again, this time I am plugging in in 0. So pi over 2 times 0 is going to be 0. So this is just going to give me pi over 2. What is the cosine at pi over 2? Well, the cosine at pi over 2 is going to be 0. So that's 0. So I have 5 times 0, which is 0 minus 3, which is negative 3. Negative 3 happens to be my level, which means I am right. Okay? So then my minimum is negative 8, and I can fill in the rest of them because I know that I'm right. So we need to graph this. So how do I graph this? Okay, so I have some height here. So I'm going to be right here. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I'm going to make these different colors so that you can see them a little bit better. And then I'm going to be at negative 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay? At negative 1, I'm at the value 2. At 0, I'm at the value negative 3, which is my level. At 1, I'm down here at negative 8. At 2, I'm back to negative 3. And at 3, I'm up here at 2. Now, these need to have a curve to them. And then there is your graph. Okay? That is problem number 2, and that's what it should look like. Let's go ahead and go on to the next problem I want to do with you, which is problem number 5. So problem number 5, very first thing I'm going to do is my amplitude. So that's the absolute value of negative 4, which is positive 4. Now, the fact that it's negative, it changes my pattern. So the typical pattern of sine is going to be level, max, level, min, level. However, because it's a negative 4 in my problem, I'm flipping my max and min, so I'm at level, min, level, max, level. Okay? Next, I need to find my period. My period is going to be 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. b is 2/3 here, so this is going to be 2 pi divided by 2/3, which is going to be 2 pi times the reciprocal. The 2's cancel out to give you 3 pi. Now, I need your brain to stop and I need your brain to think. 3 pi, what is that compared to the number 2 pi? Is it taking me longer to complete one cycle, meaning I'm at rest, or is it taking me a shorter amount of time to complete one cycle, meaning I'm faster and I'm exercising? Well, if you said that 3 pi is greater than 2 pi, which means you are taking longer, which means you're resting, then you would be correct. Okay? 3 pi is greater than 2 pi, so it's taking me longer. I'm more at rest. So from there, I need to go ahead and find my interval. My interval is going to be my period divided by 4, so that's going to be 3 pi over 4. So the next thing I need to find is my max level and my min, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and find my level first. My level is 0 plus or minus c. I have no c here. The c is not there. So the c is attached by addition, so if it's not there, c is 0, okay? So this means I'm going to have 0 being my level value, which means my maximum is my level plus my amplitude, so that is going to be 0 plus my amplitude of 4, which means my minimum is going to be my level minus my amplitude, so that's 0 minus 4, which is negative 4 as my minimum. Okay? So I found my level, my max, and my min. Okay? The next thing I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and do my starting point and my ending point. How do I know my starting point and ending point has changed? Because I have parentheses showing that I'm indicating that I'm moving it left and right as a phase shift. Yes? So my starting point is found by taking the junk in the parentheses and setting it equal to 0. Over here, my ending point is found by taking the junk in the parentheses and setting it equal to 2 pi. So I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So this is a 2x minus a pi is equal to 0. So 2x is equal to pi, so x is equal to pi over 2. Okay? Next, my ending point, I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So that's a 2x minus a pi is equal to a 6 pi. Number one mistake, 2 times 3 is 6. Add that pi over. You're going to get 2x is equal to 7 pi. X is equal to 7 pi over 2. Okay, how do I know that I'm right? Well, the way that I know that I'm right is I'm going to go ahead and check my period length. So that's your starting point minus your ending point. So that's pi over 2 minus 7 pi over 2. That's going to give me negative 6 pi over 2, which is going to be absolute value of negative 3 pi, which is just 3 pi. Now, I already checked this, and I know that my length is 3 pi, so I now know that what I did was correct. So from here, the next thing that I have to do is my XY table. Now, this is not nearly as nice as our last one, so you're going to need to use your calculator for this. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to have x, and the very first place that I'm going to start is at pi over 2. So I'm going to put pi over 2 here. Then I'm going to take pi over 2, and I'm going to add my interval. My interval is 3 pi over 4. Right? So I come over to my calculator, and I am literally going to type in here 1 divided by 2, making my pi be a variable, plus 3 divided by 4, and that's going to give me 5/4. So this is going to be equal to 5 pi over 4. Then I'm going to take 5 pi over 4, and I'm going to add 3 pi over 4 to that. And you're going to go back over to your calculator and literally say plus 3 divided by 4, keeping that there to give you the 2. But that's going to be 2 pi, okay? So then I'm going to do that again. 2 pi plus 3 pi over 4 is equal to, come back over here and add the plus 3 divided by 4. And that's going to give you 11 pi over 4. Then you're going to go ahead and do that again. 11 pi over 4 plus 3 pi over 4. And that's going to give you plus 3 divided by 4. 7 pi over 2. Which, that is where I was supposed to end. So now I have all my values. Okay, those values were all super important. These purple values are the values that you're going to be using as your x values on your graph. Then you're going to have the negative 4 times the sine of 2/3 x minus pi over 3. Then you're going to have the pattern. And then you're going to have your y value. Okay? Now, we already know that our y value, our pattern, is flipped because our lovely little amplitude is negative. So my pattern says that this is going to be level. then this is going to be minimum, then this is going to be level, then it's going to be maximum, and then it's going to be level. So we have to do some checking here. So we're going to come back over here and we're going to check. So the very first number we're plugging in is going to be pi over 2. So I'm going to put my quadrants up here, 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, and then 0, negative 1. Okay? So I'm going to simply plug in 2/3 times pi over 2, because that's what I'm starting with. I'm starting right here. And then minus pi over 3. The 2's cancel out. And I'm left with pi over 3 minus pi over 3, which gives you 0. And what is the sign at 0? The sign at 0 is 0. So you have negative 4 times 0, which is 0. So coming back over here, this value is 0. And tell me, was that my level? It was my level, so I know that I am correct. Does that make sense? Okay? So the next value I'm plugging in there is going to be 5 pi over 4. So I'm going to erase all of this. Now, the whole point here is to land on your quadrant angles. So you want to land at 0. The calculations, when you do them, should give you 0 pi over 2 pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So this is going to be 2 over 3 times, what's the next point I'm plugging in? 5 pi over 4. So this is 5 pi over 4. So this 2 cancels out, and that gives me a 2, and this is going to be 5 pi over 6 minus pi over 3. So you're going to use your calculator. So you're going to say 5 divided by 6 minus 1 divided by 3. And that's going to give you 1/2. So that means that this is pi over 2. Well, what is the sign at pi over 2? That is a 1 to give me negative 4. So negative 4 is what is my minimum. So I need to check to make sure that my minimum is indeed negative 4. So if I come back over here, I do see that negative 4 is my minimum. So that means what I have done is correct. So I can go ahead and put 0, 4, and 0. Okay? So now I need to graph this thing. So how do I graph this thing? Well, I know that I'm going to be at a height of 4 and a depth of negative 4. So and I'm going to be starting at pi over 2. So here's pi over 2. Here's going to be 5 pi over 4. Here's going to be 2 pi. Here's going to be 11 pi over 4. And I need to extend this, and then this is going to be 7 pi over 2. So I know I'm out here. I'm not starting at 0. So I need to go ahead and say, okay, well at pi over 2, I'm at 0. At 5 pi over 4, I'm at negative 4. At 2 pi, I'm back to 0. At 11 pi over 4, I'm up to 4. And then at 7 pi over 4, I'm back to 0. Now, many of you are struggling being able to draw your graphs. So from here, you can go ahead and make a parabola. And then from here, you can go ahead and make a parabola. And then you can see how smooth that is then, yes? And then there's your graph. And that is one cycle or one revolution around the unit circle. And that is your graph, and you are done. Okay? I expect to see all 6 graphs. This is going to be worth 6 points tomorrow. Half a point for the problem work, and then a half a point for the graph for each problem. If you have any questions, please let me know.